GM, and welcome to the Boonafide Experience podcast. I'm your host, Kyle, but really, most people just call me Boona. This is a Web3 podcast where I myself interview artists, builders, innovators, DeFi wizards, gamers, and of course, GM enthusiasts. The whole mission here is to highlight trustworthy individuals in the Web3 space, share incredible artwork, and build a strong culture as we rewrite the history of IP and entertainment forever. If you're new and are returning and have not done so already, please go ahead and like and subscribe to this channel. It benefits you, number one, because it helps you get notified every time a new episode is dropped, which is typically on Friday at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. Also, if you do enjoy this podcast, please go ahead and leave a 5-star review on my website, which is www.boonafide.com. I'll put some links in the notes here as well. Putting reviews on my website helps get more traffic, helps boost the brand, and of course, you'll get a social media shout out. Prefer most likely on Twitter, but on your platform of choice. Okay, now let's go ahead and get into our next guest, which I have the pleasure of introducing. His name is Jonah Blake. Jonah is the chief gaming officer and founder of a company called Game Fund Partners LLC. Jonah's been an investor pretty much his entire life. We dig into some of his other jobs during the episode, but he gets the privilege of literally playing video games and deciding whether him and his fund want to invest in that or not. Sounds like a pretty dream job where most people would want to have. But what that also means is that Jonah is on the cutting edge of everything being developed in the gaming and IP world, or IP world as it relates to gaming. So, meaning he's got his ear to the ground on Web3, knowing what the latest projects and developments that are being made there. Is an absolute treat to have Jonah on. And one of my favorite parts about him, number one, he was the first person who actually invited me up to speak when I was brand new to Web3, created such a warm and welcoming vibe, really got into the question that I asked, provided a thoughtful answer, and he's honestly one of my most favorite thought leaders in the space, and he's cementing himself when it comes to gaming, Web3, and esports as well. We dive into so many topics, everything from gaming and NFTs, why there's such a backlash, esports, just general best practices in crypto when it comes to NFTs, and wording around how we can make this more popular. Y'all, this has been one of my favorite episodes, so let's go ahead and get started with the show. GM, Jonah, how are you?
GM, it's so weird to say that out loud. Like, you always type it on Twitter saying GM. I just think of like a giant SUV, but GM. We need to find a better vocalization of it. But
and it's funny when I run the transcript on a lot of my post production, it literally says it's like JEE-EM, and it completely, because I mean you can't expect AI to know that one.
Yeah, no. Well, it's first off, I want to thank you ahead of time for having me on your show. I mean, you've had some pretty incredible guests. I've been a viewer of your show, both through Twitter and just YouTube in general. And I knew it was going to be a good show. Not that we've said anything yet. When I saw your Halo shirt, and we were just talking about it off record. I want to talk about Halo at some point. Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, and just for the viewers, like I want you to. You're going to intro yourself because I'll probably butcher it. But really, just to give you a heads up of like how I met Jonah. He was actually hosting a Clubhouse room. It was right when I first started learning about Web3, and I didn't know like really my left from my right or like what way was up, because I was onboarded through the Beeple like massive sale, and without getting too much into it, that was in a really tough point during my life where a lot of things were changing and it was very uncomfortable, and Web3 was the one place where I felt like I could be at home. And Jonah was actually talking in a Clubhouse room, and I think it was like the first Clubhouse room I spoke up in, and I was so fucking nervous. Like I was sweating, like speaking in front of y'all, and treated me with like the utmost respect, and that's something I never forgot, And so I really wanted to have him on. He's I consider him like, he was in the Web3 space before me, so I consider him, I guess, as OG as I can remember, at least the people that I communicate with on a day-to-day basis. So welcome on, Jonah. I'm happy to have you here. And for the people who don't know you, give a brief introduction to yourself and what do you do?
Well, first off, whenever I have a wedding, you're going to have to give the speech because, What a lot of people I work with, they tell me I'm really bad at taking compliments, and this is going to be one of those times. I really appreciate it, and I will say you've come significantly far from Clubhouse, and you've become a voice in your own right. I mean, a lot of people listen to your show and listen to what you have to say. You've got, I mean, I think you don't give yourself enough credit. You've got people who run billion-dollar companies on your podcast. You know, you had people from Axie Infinity yesterday. We're talking like the next Activision, the next Steam. Like that's the type of people you're talking to. So
Thank you, man.
I think we're both pioneers, and I think you're an amazing person. Happy to give my background to the best of my ability in this what looks like a Snuggie. As I mentioned on the podcast, it is not a Snuggie, although it is quite comfortable. My name is Jonah Blake. I'm the Chief Gaming Officer of Game Fund Partners, which is a new fund I'm currently in raise that invest in Web3, metaverse projects, gaming. It does some alternative financing, which we can talk a little bit about. I have to be somewhat careful because we're still, what is the term on Twitter? In stealth. So kind of in stealth. Stealth.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm not that old, so my bio isn't crazy. I started writing blockchain patents in 2016. I believe I have 2 of them thus far. One called the Social Finance Network and the other called Social Investing Network, acronym SIN. I was writing about NFTs in 2018. I did not buy a CryptoPunk at that time.
Pain.
Probably doesn't make me sound good that I didn't do that, but you can't predict everything, and that's just the way it works.
Yeah.
I've worked at big firms everywhere from Warner Music Group to my family's media company, where my last position was Vice President of Global Partnerships in Esports. Happy to talk about that. I've worked for public companies in the esports space as a consultant or as someone who works with their lobbyists. Most recent thing I did for a public company is I testified in front of the State Senate of Ohio.
I was just watching a bit of that. Yeah.
Well, I didn't have a haircut back then, so I don't know if they gave me the same respect as maybe people would now. But that was a very interesting experience, and one. Talk about nerves. Man, I am not a good speaker in IRL. Great on game comms, good on Clubhouse, good on Twitter Spaces. But I think I look like I'm nervous there. I'm not sure, but I was definitely nervous. It was a different experience.
A little bit.
I was definitely nervous.
Yeah.
But that was a good experience. And while I've been operating our fund, we have a team of about 10 plus people who we haven't shared, but they're all mega hitters. I worked on a project called Smiles, called the Smilesverse.
I saw that.
I'm an advisor, and we can talk about some of the things I did there. The team gets most of the credit because they're amazing. It took us about 60 days to build that company, and then we sold product over that weekend that we launched, and in 3 days we made $4 million. And we became a top 20 NFT project on the internet. So that was cool.
Wow.
Among many other things. So that is my somewhat background. We can talk about it, but oftentimes when people ask my background, I've actually made a DocSend document where they can just read it because I don't want to give you my bio. That's a little bit about me.
Awesome, man. I appreciate that. It sounds like if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I'm 26.
That's quite a track record for someone who's 26 years old. It's actually quite bonkers, to be honest.
Well, I told my friends that I'm trying to be the most successful parent-teacher conference dad. I don't know why this is a weird goal. It was a joke among my friends, but I don't know. I like what I do. I don't know. There's people who have many harder and worse jobs.
Mm-hmm.
My job is literally to play video games for a living. I mean, like, I kind of hit the jackpot on jobs.
Yeah.
My literal job is to play the video games and then determine if we should invest in it in some way. So yeah.
That's wild. That's wild, man. So I got to ask. I mean, we're all gamers here, and I know you mentioned Halo. Tell me, I guess, and everyone has like. There's a lot of things that are the same about people that grew up playing Halo, but there's a lot of the reasons for getting in. Some are the same, some are different. I'd like to know, like, your intro to Halo and like how that shaped, like your gaming career today.
Yeah, well, I feel good because when I launched Halo Infinite a few days ago, I was kind of insulted. They put me in Gold 6, and I thought I was better than Gold 6, and I just hit meaning Platinum
Yeah.
last night. And I heard that, are you in Diamond? I heard you're in Diamond.
I placed Plat 4 and I grinded out of Plat 4 to Diamond 1. Yeah.
Okay, so that's my over the holiday break. If I'm not traveling, I want to hit Diamond. That's on my list. First off, Microsoft is listening to this. I mean, hit a home run. I mean, that game
out of the park.
I mean,
yeah.
I bought all the FPS games. I bought Vanguard, I bought Battlefield, and I bought not bought, and I'm playing Halo Infinite. I have Game Pass. I play Vanguard and Battlefield. They're great games, but they're not even close to the design of this game. But going back to, man, Halo. I think we were talking about this off record. Halo is the game that actually got me started doing any of this stuff. Like, I wouldn't even be building a fund. I wouldn't be doing these jobs in gaming if it wasn't for Halo. I remember. I mean, I'll go all the way back to Halo 1.
Yeah.
Halo 3 is one I remember particularly because I live in South Florida, and a long time ago, it's 2007. I think they closed down around 2010. Do you know Circuit City? Have you ever heard of Circuit City?
Yeah. They closed down
Circuit
when
City,
I was. Yeah.
So Circuit City was like the Best Buy of my day. Like, we had Best Buy, but Best Buy wasn't like
what it is today.
But Circuit City was like a big deal because it was across from Florida Atlantic University, which is in my area. And it was like they had Esports. All good. I have a new puppy, and it's totally super cool. What kind of?
Thank you, man.
I'll ask later what kind of dog you have. But
Yeah.
But I remember Circuit City was doing like esports gaming clubs before they were like popular, and so you could go to. I didn't have a gaming PC back then because I just didn't PC game, and you can go into Circuit City. And in the middle of the main storefront, they had like a computer lab, like a soundproof computer lab with like 6 computers.
And I didn't even know that, yeah.
They were all playing World of Warcraft, and you could never like rent one because all the kids from like FAU or the surrounding high school were on it. But I remember going there. I remember these games exactly. I remember almost every game I played. They had a demo for Lost Planet. Do you remember Lost Planet?
I know the name, but I never played it.
Old game, Japanese style game. And then I went to go and pre-order Halo 3. And it was around my birthday because my birthday's in September, and I forget when in September it came out. But that game, Halo 3, really did a lot of innovative work before. Like, they were ahead of the market like 10, 15 years before. First of all, like the Forge menu. Yeah. We were playing like the zombie game modes. We had like a
Duck Hunt. Did you play Duck Hunt?
Yeah, we played Duck Hunt. We had Jenga. Jenga was my favorite. And you're trying to hold on. We had all these game modes that no one monetized. There were game modes that kids just made in Halo 3, and you join these like private lobbies, and people were like trash talking each other, or it was your friends after school. Halo 3, honestly, like is like what Roblox is today, like in terms of like how they build games and the service. I think Microsoft was pretty amazing with that. And then Halo 2 and Halo 1, I had those. I didn't really understand the significance of Halo 1, but I had it. I was way too young to understand the significance of it. But I remember, Microsoft and Xbox has a long history with me. I remember playing Fusion Frenzy. Do you remember Fusion Frenzy?
Yeah, I remember Fusion Frenzy. Yeah.
Fusion Frenzy. I played it on Game Pass a little bit ago.
It's nice that they brought all those back. Like it's nice that they resurfaced some old classics in there.
Yeah, it's incredible, but I don't know. I get long-winded. The moral of the story is I've had Halo as a core part of my gaming experience since like I was 6 or 7 years old, and here I am at 26 playing Halo Infinite day one as I'm trying to be an adult. So that game made a huge impact on my career, and I think many other people.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Like with me, it was my experiences with Halo CE. It was with the very first one, and I remember my hands not being big enough to hold the controller. Like I was that young, you know,
It was
and
like this big.
yeah,
It was like holding a lunchbox.
yeah, the Duke controller. Not many people remember that, but I didn't have that Xbox. I had like the generation after when they had the revolutionary smaller controller that came with it, or what we know as a normal size controller today. But yeah, mine was it was Halo. Like, and I again was really too young to understand. Very similar to you. I'm 29, you know, almost 30, and very young to understand the significance. All I remember was really just how it made me feel. And I remember not really having a whole lot in common with a lot of people IRL, you know, and like in these friends groups. And I remember the reason Halo 2 meant so much to me was because I guess rewind a little bit back. Halo 1, I used to also be on the swim team, and we would bring our Xboxes and do 16-player system link in like these hotel rooms. We always get these hotel rooms with connecting rooms, and we play, you know, 16-player like LAN parties, and that was like some of the most nostalgic and most fun memories I've ever had in my life. And what Halo 2 really did was like it made it to where we didn't have to do that. They were still very fun, but this all of a sudden plugged me into the people outside of my small, well, it's not small anymore, but the town of like 50 or 60,000 people that I lived in. And it plugged me into the entire universe. And I don't really, of course, it's hard to say like, you know, this generation doesn't understand because they don't, you know, but that was a huge deal. And like, Halo 2, and then Halo 2 was really where it built the momentum, but Halo 3 was really where it kind of had the spotlight, you know, and it was just it was a cultural phenomenon. It was like it's almost like the Star Wars or like the Lord of the Rings of like video games, because it meant that much to people, you know.
I think it's going to be important 20 more years from now, just
Yeah.
in terms of an IP of some kind. I don't know how they'll transmogrify or do
Yeah.
things with it, but I remember Halo 2 when I went to summer camps. People brought their
Yeah.
Xboxes, and the camp counselor would give you like certain times that you could do this. And I remember like learning from that experience. That was fun.
Yeah.
And then I remember like in middle school, I think I was like seventh grade. It was Dead Space 1 or 2. I don't remember which one it was, but
Yeah.
one of my buddies brought over Dead Space 1 or 2, and then they brought three other friends. And I remember, like, I didn't know these people at the time, and we were all like hanging out around the couch, like watching this guy play, and it was like watching a movie. And like those people, I'm still friends with them. I play New World with them today. Like these, like
Wow.
maybe one was just at a wedding, the other is like getting engaged, which all of that feels really weird to me. Like that's a whole other conversation. That's like I'm getting old conversation.
Yeah.
These are people that I met through gaming. So for me, it's been a very social experience, which I know people are just sort of figuring it out now, at least both on the investment side and on the consumer side.
Right. And something that I've noticed is that like, and it's funny that I dove off the deep end into Web3 back in March, but even before then, one of the main reasons I started this podcast, and I interviewed a bunch of like people from all areas of the esports community, and it was the whole mission of that was really to highlight that like, look, like gaming is not just something that a bunch of nerds do in their mom's basement, you know, at 40 years old. You know, it's like there's a really vibrant, a very fun community, and it's actually very socially accepted, and you can actually make a living doing it. It's getting easier and easier the more, again, like the more money that's coming into it, the more people that start to see really that it's actually a lucrative business. It's one of the most lucrative business models that you can get into. It's not the easiest, but the upside is incredible, you know, because it takes a lot to make an actual video game, like a work of art. So that was like one of the main missions for doing that. So, and then of course, like I noticed myself not being able to not talk about crypto and NFTs. And so I just said, you know what, fuck it. Like, I'm just going to bring people on to talk about this because I bring it up in every conversation to people who don't know what I'm talking about. So I may as well do it now, you know?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I remember talking to on Clubhouse, there was a woman, shouldn't be forgetting her name. She's a wonderful woman. She's a parent. She's a part of COPE, which is basically a group of parents who have celebrity gamer children or streaming children or children who want to be in the gaming space. I wouldn't call them a lobbying body, but more of a coalition of people with a shared interest. And she provided a lot of value when we spoke. And then someone who came up in the audience said, all my kids do is play games and they don't want to do any schoolwork. So how do I convince them using games to do schoolwork or find a career path. It was something of that nature.
Yeah.
You know, and this is outside of play to earn. That's a whole other conversation. But this is more like the traditional, what does everyone call it? TradFi. But I said, well, what is your kid kind of like? And she was saying that maybe they're interested in law or something with business. And I was like, you don't have, I mean, developing the game is a great career. Playing the game is a great career. Much harder to get into. Difficulty to make money, but it's like anything. It's like sports. But there's like business is a big part of this. Like business is really needed. It's like any other product or service. You need maybe M&A lawyers. You need lawyers that handle contracts. You need people that handle partnerships and sales and like customer retention. Like you need community managers. Like there are hundreds of jobs just for I don't even know the size of Halo's 343 industry staff. I'm sure it's larger than most, but you can bet there are many lawyers at that office. There's many marketers. There's many publishing representatives. There's B2B, B2C. The space is bountiful, like when it comes to jobs. So if you play the games and you put your schooling in the context of how I can work in that space, which is what I've always wanted to do, you'll find work, and you'll probably find meaningful work. It's always this whole idea that playing games is a waste of time. And I've had people tell me that before. They don't think that anymore. But when I was growing up, I definitely got those comments. And I think that's just short-sightedness. I don't slight people for thinking that. It's the information, but groups like COPE are important to actually release that information. It's not, these are amazing podcasts, but they're the 40-year-olds of the world, unless they're in VC or they're in gaming, are not going to be watching this. It's going to be those special interest groups or lobbying groups or organizations that are doing direct outreach. Those are the groups that are really important. So working with those people or talking to those people, it's all good. It's all good. Honestly,
I appreciate it.
My new dog, now she's a very cute corgi puppy. Her name is Luna. Her name's Luna, but it's short for lunatic.
Her name is Princess Leia. And she very much acts like it. And any dog or UPS truck that drives by, she's gonna let them know that they're not welcome. Mine is all bark and no bite. She lets them know. It. The minute they show up, she speeds away. Got it. I think the careers on the traditional side are there's plenty. And then you've got I don't know when you want to get that deep. We can get that deep. The world of staking and pooling and DAOs and a lot of these games that aren't actually games at all. They look like games, but they're not games. But that's a whole other thing. Yeah, man. I mean, I want to touch on one more point, before we really go into that, and and it's really want to get some of the because I know you mentioned you worked for your family's business. You mentioned you worked for a few more funds. What got you involved in actually, I want to ask this: have you ever had a normal job that was not in gaming or funding? Yeah. I've had. I did some catering for my friend's mom back in school. That I would never do that again. Much respect. No, fuck that. A lot of respect to people who do it. That is a really hard job. It's tough. That is not an easy job. I've worked in retail. I sold clothes at the mall, like every normal kid. I did really well. I made good money, and I made them a lot of money. Actually, I think that job in particular was really important. I really think people should do at least one traditional this wasn't minimum wage. I did a little better, but close to minimum wage job in which you're doing something that builds a fundamental skill. I think for me, that job was very much like sales. I was never good at sales growing up. I couldn't sell myself to the prom. How would I be able to sell deals to people? Same. If I can't sell myself to the prom, how am I gonna? You know what I'm saying? Right. It's. I think having a sales job in some ways is really important because even if you're behind the computer and doing dev work or some finance work, I think at some point, if you're not selling a product, you're selling yourself. And knowing how to sell yourself is really important. And for me, that job
was a lot of selling yourself, and why you should buy from me versus another store or another group.
Yeah.
So yes, I have had normal jobs. I will say not that many.
Yeah.
I jumped in pretty quick, and I absolutely came from privilege. That is one thing that I acknowledge. I come from a pretty decent family that has a pretty extensive background. Um, you can't change that. It's not something that I feel is
Right.
bad, but I do
Right.
think if people come from my position, they should do something to help others or bring others up or hear other people's voices. I think that's like really important, which is something we try and do here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not always amazing at it. It's always a learning experience, but in the future, there's a lot I'd like to do, charities I'd like to work with. One I really
Yeah.
like, I don't know what I could do with them, but I'll just shout them out. I love Gamers Outreach. That
Yeah. They're
charity,
phenomenal. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
kids who are on that level of sickness or health complications. I mean, like staring at the wall all day in a cold hospital is not
Yeah.
an ideal, comfortable experience. So just like gaming kind of made me feel better, my day to day in my life. So I think they're my favorite charity that's gaming focused. So one day I'd like to do something with them.
Yeah, man. I like they've always stuck out. I mean, in a good way, but they've always stuck out like a sore thumb when it comes to like nonprofits and charities that do a lot of good work like that. I mean, not to say that there's every nonprofit, most of them have a good cause, but that one to me meant the most just because they literally built a product that changed kids' lives that, may or may not live for that much longer. And, it's interesting. To hear a lot of the same arguments that you and I both heard it growing up as kids is like video games are a waste of time, but then you amplify a message like that, and a lot of people will probably start to change their mind because it's really just a source of light. It's a source of joy. It's a source of escape, whatever the case may be. And you're not really mad unless you're playing Halo 2 or Halo 3. You're not mad when you're playing video games, right?
Oh, I feel like I played Forza Horizon 5. I didn't feel
Right.
I thought it was a very
Yeah.
meditative is not the right word, but relaxing,
Well,
therapeutic
yeah.
experience. You're driving through these jungles and you're visiting these monuments from real world locations, and it's pretty cool. And I'm fortunate enough that we talked off record that I want to get another gaming PC, but I have a decent one now, so I can play it at a pretty good level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's pretty. Gaming is a lot of different things, and it's not just playing. I think that's really important. Like, there's a game is associated with play, and I don't think that's all it is anymore. I think it's more.
It's not. I mean, when I describe esports to people, it's like, it's the way like the simplified elevator pitch. It's high paced, high fidelity chess, right? It's really intense, really fast paced chess because the amount of decisions that has to go through someone's mind when they're competing at that high of a level. I mean, it's the same as regular sports. They have to think of number one, they have to play the game enough to know the muscle memory. They have to know how to get in the other team's head. They have to know map movement, spawns, when to shoot, when not to shoot, like what the right play is. Do they listen to their teammate? Do they not listen to their teammate? There's so many different cognitive things that are actually happening when people are playing games that when you take the actual skill set, that can be applied to just about anything in life.
Well, yeah. I mean, teamwork, competitive nature.
Yeah, that's the most important one. Yeah.
I think people miss that. Having competitive nature is not always a negative thing. I think there are many good qualities to have that. I mean, you get yourself out of a hole, or you're going through a tough time, or you're trying to do as well as you can do in your own life. And whether that's hobby or career, I think having some competitive nature is a very healthy trait to have, as long as it doesn't transfer to a negative emotion. But no, I mean, I've looked at hundreds of companies at this point, and they don't all just make games. I've looked at one that's actually building games that are meant to be prescription medicine. I've looked at companies that are doing meditative VR that have gamification. I've looked at data and CRM company. I've looked at every field that has employed gaming in some fashion, and they're early. Some of them are not early. Some of them have the substantial capital to make it. Others are experimenting. And that's one thing I like about Web3 is people are not afraid to do some really crazy things that might not have any ability to succeed, but the fact is that they want to do it anyway. because they know that even if they don't succeed in this, the fact is 10 years from now, we will know what those models are, and everyone is getting, the world is getting smaller and smaller. More people, but everyone can connect with each other a lot quicker. And people remember, if you're the guy that tried that thing that didn't work, but it was cool as hell, and you know exactly how everything works, like you're going to raise money for a company, or you're going to work at a big company, or you're going to invest in companies. I think the worst thing you could do is not experiment in the world we're living right now.
Right. And I think it's a great transition to like where we're at now in Web3. And that's I think, I grew up, like I started, like, I guess growing up on the internet, if you want to call it that, in the Twitch community, Twitch and YouTube and live streaming and YouTube communities. And I just, like it was great. There was a couple people that stuck out, in good ways, that they were actually doing it, but it felt like just people complaining all the time of what Twitch was doing or not doing, and it just got incredibly old. And I kept telling to myself, I'm like, surely this isn't it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, surely this can't be all Twitter has to offer, or all this career or this venture of mine that I want to do has to offer. And that is one of the single most things I've learned about Web3, and what has made the experience so attracting and just honestly addicting to a certain degree. I feel like it's a constant loop between Twitter, Discord, OpenSea, and it's just a constant like cycle.
You check it in the morning. You like my favorite thing. This is I don't understand how people think this is a good metric. Separate conversation, but when the first thing they say about an NFT project is like, what's the floor? The floor isn't a good metric for anything, and the floor can be manipulated. The floor is not what the floor necessarily is. The floor is meant for people who know how to manipulate those markets and make money. There are much better indicators of the viability of an NFT project beyond the floor. But I know we talk about Twitter and Web3, and that's like, you hear GM, when floor,
and when moon,
when Lambo, and like a couple of other things. But
yeah. I mean, and it's funny, when I understood GM is when I understood Web3. That was like it's what I think a lot of people. The people that have a lot of time, a hard time understanding it, are people that have never really been involved in internet culture, and memes, and like they may have seen a meme, but like what a meme actually is, or the people that created them, or the communities that really thrived on them. Because that's what I think baffles so many people, is that, you got Satoshi, who makes like these stick figure memes, and they sell for, the equivalent of like 10,000 USD. And people are just absolutely baffled by that, and they're like, why is this happening? What is going on? Why the fuck are all these animals like flooding Twitter, And I think there's just you may have some ways, but I struggle with the right type of onboarding. Like there's a certain level of intellect where you need to come in here and be able to think for yourself. And I think that is one of the most exciting things about Web3, is that we go from a culture of headline articles, of quick scrolling, to like, no, you actually need to pay attention, and you need to think for yourself, and you literally custody your own information and your own assets.
Yeah. So onboarding, it's in my perspective, I see onboarding, like I think of like Web3 as I understand the concept, and then I'm trying to imagine how another person who's never experienced this goes in, and it really feels like an Ivy League level education. Like it does take a lot of time. I started reading about this stuff in 2016, and there's still a lot I don't know, and it's 2021. But I know enough to make very good concepts and positions and thoughts regarding the group I work with. But when you say onboarding, I think the first thing people need to be onboarded on is not the NFTs, but understanding how to use crypto. So I would start with Coinbase, and Coinbase will do NFTs. There's a big difference between knowing what a Bitcoin or a 1 ETH is, and understanding how to do liquidity pools, and like deploying liquidity by hedging your NFT in like a basket of assets. Like that is a 0 to 1 situation. I think everyone should make one MetaMask at minimum, know how to use MetaMask, which for people who don't understand, because I realize we're on a podcast, it is a wallet. It is a Google Chrome or Apple app Google Chrome extension, Apple app that basically connects to, several blockchains, but primarily the Ethereum blockchain, and it is essentially your interface between the blockchain, making transactions and owning things. So use MetaMask, it's free. Understand how MetaMask works, watch some YouTube videos on why it exists. And I think it all starts at the wallet, and it starts at the Coinbase account. If you can understand how the wallet works, you can understand how to do everything else and learn over time. I think the single biggest invention here, outside of NFTs, is the wallet, because it essentially is your passport to every site on the planet going forward. It is your traveling bank account that's not regulated by a bank. I think MetaMask is at the center of knowledge, and then Coinbase, because you should learn how to transfer currency. Once you get better at that, then you should look at DeFi. So you look at like Uniswap, SushiSwap, learn how to do what's called DEX trading, decentralized exchanges. These are basically, it's an exchange that's not regulated. It is self-sustaining, because you're going to see a lot of other coins and a lot of other entities on those DEXs. And once you figure that out, which again, this is multi-year, this is not like tomorrow situation. Where I'm on my level of learning here, I am now getting a better understanding of how you can turn your NFT asset into a asset that can be loaned against or borrowed against and turned into liquid, finance without actually selling the asset, which is similar to, traditional finance, kind of, except it's with a JPEG that's backed by something else. And like I've talked to other bankers, and for them, this is like a question mark everywhere. It's not like they're not opposed. They want to know this stuff because I've talked to them.
Interesting.
They just don't know where to start. I can tell you I've talked to massive entities that want to get in, that are very traditional entities, but don't know where to begin. And they're on the same level as the average person. And these are people who have access to everyone. Like, it's just big, big people. So Coinbase, MetaMask, OpenSea, just to understand how buying and selling works. And then once you understand those fundamentals, start looking at the influencers, and don't buy what the influencers are buying, but understand why they're promoting certain things, and understand that NFTs are multiple different types of entities. You can have an NFT that's just an art piece. You can have an NFT that is a golf club membership that gives you access to something. You can have an NFT that
like V-Friends,
very close to. It is not. It is a collectible piece, but is like being involved in a business on a voting mechanism. So every NFT can be backed in a very different way. I read, I think it was Goldman, it was today. And this was related to Smiles, that they think the NFT market will be a $300 billion market, which I think is funny. I actually think it'll be in the trillions, which sounds nuts. But the reasoning is the gaming market's already $300 billion. And if the gaming market hasn't utilized the majority of DeFi, that would mean that it goes far in excess of the market cap of $300 billion. So I thought that was a very early estimate. And they were saying,
safe.
They were saying luxury fashion was between 20 and 50 billion, which that makes some sense to me, because this is a whole other conversation. I want to make sure that I'm not going so off the rails here, because I could do this for like 10 hours. So how about you help guide me towards where you want me to talk in the context of what you think is interesting here.
Yeah, man. No, I like that you broke that down, because I didn't follow that path, and there's not a right path or a wrong path. No. There's a lot of it suggested paths, and something that, because I guess my onboard to this, I originally discovered crypto in 2014. I thought it was the dumbest thing in the world. And I said, this is stupid. Everyone at my job was not working. They were all running around with their Coinbase app and looking at these markets like they were like this is a New York Stock Exchange. And I said, y'all are a bunch of nerds, and this is coming from a gamer. You know what I mean? I said, this is stupid. This is monopoly money. I don't see the point in it. Because at that time I didn't really understand the value of being the custody of your own funds and not having a central authority. I was still of the mindset where I enjoyed having the banks take care of something for me. I didn't really understand how to make my money work for me. I wasn't really interested in how to make my money work for me. And it really wasn't until NFTs came around that I've learned more about finance in 6 months than I have in the entire 29-year period of my life. And that was like my on-ramp. NFTs were actually my on-ramp to crypto, because I said, okay, culture, I can invest in culture. I can invest in memes. I understand. I'm not an expert, but this is something that like tangible that I can grab onto. And to add on to like, I guess, magnify or amplify or add on to what you were saying, is that there's so many different, like, there's NFTs in crypto, and then there's once you get onboarded, there's so many different niches within this space. Like, find what makes you happy, like, because there's so many things that make a lot of different people happy here. And if you're like me, which you probably are, even though I'm a gamer, I get confused. There's only so many hours in the day, and it's almost painful to not be involved in every single thing that makes me excited. When I have to focus down on a certain thing, it actually is painful, because what if I miss out on this cool thing that I want to be a part of, and have my provenance like documented, you know what I mean?
I fall prey to that sometimes, but it's also one of those things where, more is not valuable. Like, for me,
it's not.
I've learned enough in this space. I'm always learning, that the market will be so large, just like today's market is, that you could. I really believe in the master of none idea, right? Like, if you try to be an expert in too many things, you're not an expert in anything.
Right. Yeah.
And so for me, when I got into this space, I said, what am I good at? What do I think I do well? And you may not know what you do well, and that's okay. Then you should explore as many things as possible. I'm in a different position where I know that the next 40 years, maybe more, depending on how technology plays, as long as I'm in a capacity to do business, I'm going to work in gaming in some fashion. Like, that is the thing I already know. Most people don't know what they want to do, so that's okay. Right. But for me, I said, there are a lot of things I'm not going to know. I'm not going to be an amazing expert in traditional finance, in the sense that I'm not going to be the person coding and developing the back end of this. Right. I could learn it. It's, for me, not a problem to learn. If I put enough time into anything, I can learn anything. I think anyone can, if they put enough time and really concentrate. But it's not something that excites me, and it's not something that I feel is a part of my natural skill set. For me, it's gaming, gameplay design, and how gameplay design works within this new DeFi narrative. It's business development and negotiation and investments in the space, because I can see a lot of the macro and the micro. And I think relationships. I think in many ways, I think I do work with a lot of people on onboarding. So that's where I play. And so obviously play to earn, and that's a whole other mess. That's like what you were said in 2014 is what we're seeing now in play to earn. That's like the 2014 of now. I have a lot of views on that, but it's not that different from when esports became the term, right? I see a lot of deals. It's funny. I see deals that shouldn't be on blockchain or shouldn't be in web. Well, everything should eventually go to Web3, but they want to increase the valuation, so they go, "Oh, it's actually blockchain." Right. But getting to it, for me, my specialty is gaming. That's not going to change. It's in esports. It's a part of that. Gaming is just the larger umbrella. Sure. But I do get a lot of echoes back to when esports was popping off over the past few years. Because I've been around competitive. I've never been an esports pro. It'd be nice, but I've never been an esports pro. But basically, a lot of new money floods the space, and people want to be a part of all of it.
They want to be a first mover.
And they want to be everything, and they think they're all going to walk away with billions of dollars. And oftentimes, the market doesn't work how you in your mind believe it works. And that's why I like data, because the data depends on who's doing the data, as we know from public news.
From esports.
The idea is data doesn't lie. That's the idea, the concept. And so, now you see what works with esports. You see what works with Web3 in esports, and that's a whole new thing that's emerging, like DAOs in esports. There's only a couple so far. Yeah.
And I'd like to touch on that a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, I'd like to touch on, because one of my I want to get your take on this, because the way I view esports, or like how esports right now is incredibly unsustainable. Like it's one of the hardest business models to like nail, because I don't think there is a business model for it. Because I'm sure there is, but I look at teams like Optic, like 100 Thieves, Envy. Well, Envy just got bought out by Optic, but United, like all of these tier one esports, and a lot of them go about climbing the ladder a different way. With 100 Thieves, it's merch. They are an apparel company that just so happens to contribute to esports, and I think that's one of my favorite business models. But it's not. There's more than one way to do that. But I look at, I see the cream at the top, but then I look at everyone fighting to get to the top. And I've actually been a part of I was a content creator for, a smaller organization that ended up making some really terrible mistakes. So I'm not really going to mention it. But it was it was after I got out. But, the decisions that they had to make on a daily basis just to make sure that their teams had enough funding to like go to events, to pay a salary, to get jerseys, to get merch, to get, to me, it just seemed like sponsorships, which require you to win. And we all know that not everyone can be a winner.
You got like a 20% or less chance of actually making money. And that's per year. That's not like forever 20%. That's like every year. And that variable changes based on your roster. And rosters change like they're flipping burgers. Like it's every like 5 days there's a new roster change. Just how that could be like because how esports has been around for about 20 years, close to it, but it's still early, right? In the context of what we do. Here's what I've explained to potential investors, people who are in the space who share these views, or the average person when they ask me about esports and what do I see esports as. On the org perspective, the team org perspective, I see esports as not a revenue generating business, but a marketing expense. And what I mean by that is, what is FaZe Clan actually? In 100 Thieves, they're lifestyle, merch, and multimedia conglomerates. Or they're similar to a CAA or UTA, where they take large sponsor packages and then disperse them among their creators, and then they onboard them. But they're really Hollywood companies. They're gaming themed, they're gaming centric, but that's not how they get the market size or how they get to where they need to go. Esports is probably what it is the best advertising method outside of the NFL. So, like, for me, I think about when I look at an org, I'm like, what are you really? And I haven't seen many esports orgs that are actually tech companies. Actually, I say this joke to a lot of other investors and other people. Well, I'll ask. I haven't brought up this joke to you. Who do you think is the wealthiest esports company in the world?
Ooh, I would say it's probably the two teams. One of the two teams I mentioned, if I were to guess. Well, you said who is the wealthiest?
Which org is the wealthiest esports org in the world? Now, granted, there may be some caveats, certain variables, but the joke still holds.
Right.
The wealthiest
Okay.
esports org in the world.
I would say, and I'll tell you why. And not even because if you strip away the money, like that's what I'm basing this off of. Optic, because I feel like they invented, like I feel like they were one of the key contributors to building actual esports for console. That would be my thing.
So maybe you think that the actual answer is Shopify. And Shopify Rebellion. They have, I don't know if they still have it. Last I checked, they had a StarCraft 2 roster, because I know their founder likes StarCraft 2 heavy.
I remember that.
I think they still have a Rocket League roster. I don't know if it's still there. I haven't seen it lately. But that's the wealthiest esports org. It's a company that's not in esports. They bought a roster. They brought in some esports managers. But they're Shopify. They're an e-commerce platform. So that's your wealthiest company. So what I'm saying is, it's okay, you do this, and you use esports to market this. That for me is like, when I look at an org, that's important, because if all you do is compete, at some point you're going to be in the negative, and you're either going to need to raise money or you're going to lose a lot of money. And oftentimes, and this, I won't say who or what, because this is not a shit talk podcast.
Right.
I'm not on that podcast.
Right.
But oftentimes in that space, it is a hot potato fest with investors' money. Where you take someone in early, hopefully you get in early, so you do decent, and then if you're smart enough, that they're not making money, you pass it off to someone else for a stupid valuation.
Yeah.
That's not something you want to do, but that's what I've seen. So, and then you have the other issue about esports, and these are all things that will change over time. But the reality is, I think esports is a marketing industry and not a profit-generating industry. Is that the money is going to the publishers? The publishers control everything. You can't do you can't sneeze unless the publishers allow you to sneeze, and that's just how it works. It's their IP. That's their right.
Yep.
You can't go and put on your own tournament and do a prize pool beyond what they want to do because they have certain people don't understand this. They have bylaws. They have rules. You can't put on a tournament that's more money than their tournament. They don't want that, or they'll send you a DMCA. You can't put on that tournament, or your team can't go make special merch because that didn't fit into the bylaws of what you signed. They own everything, and so if you think you're an esports org that's going to make money off of a publisher, unless you have a great relationship with that publisher and you guys are like buddies, or maybe they buy you, which that would be a conflict of interest, you're going to have a problem. And I don't have all the books in front of me, but spending $25 million for a franchise slot is not something I would have done.
Yeah. Hey, you don't even have to name the game.
I love the game. I buy their games every year.
Right.
When you think about it in the larger picture.
Yeah. I mean, no, I thanks for saying, like, I actually didn't even think about it like that, because I just kept, in my mind, I viewed it as esports orgs, like, and that was it. But having esports as like a marketing sector of your brand, of your company, whatever your company does, makes a lot more sense. Now, when it comes to, we've seen a couple, I've only seen, I guess, 2 companies dabble in Web3. I've only seen one dabble in NFTs. And that's 100 Thieves, where it was like a collection of like 10 100 Thieves NFTs. And I think the maximum they sold for was like 4 or 5 ETH or something like that. But there was no actual utility behind it. It was just like they were just testing the waters to see what they had done, and they had lined it up with their Inner Infinity collection, which was a genius marketing play. That's their biggest collection that I bought. I bought so much of that. And then I see TSM, obviously they have the naming, like, FTX bought the naming rights, to TSM. But outside of that, I haven't really seen it. And, at large, from what I've just noticed and what I've seen, even when Discord announced they poked at Web3, it seems like esports and gaming are very, very much resistant to Web3. What do you think, I guess the question is, like, what do you think needs to happen for that script or that narrative to change? Like, what value does Web3 need to bring esports to where people stop seeing it as a threat, if that makes sense? So,
a couple of things. First of all, there's a lot more deals than that. The one who made more money than 100 Thieves, I think, was actually OG Esports. They actually had one out months before 100 Thieves, and they made a lot of money. I forget the exact amount, but
got it.
They made a lot more money than they did on their tournaments with that product. Yep. You also have DAOs. There's an esports DAO that just released. That's a whole other thing, but it's close.
Right.
I think it's called Baze in Brazil. You have another one in Southeast Asia that's called Yield Guild Games. That's
I've heard of them.
It's all Web3. Baze is essentially going to do what Yield Guild does in Southeast Asia and Brazil. They're less about esports, but something else. Even though I like them, that's a whole other thing. I'm not going to say anything in this podcast. Save that for another episode. Because that would take 3 hours to explain. But they're it's more of a work from home thing than it is an actual game to a degree.
Gotcha.
But it's good. It's good. But it's like esports. It uses the marketing of it. But I've seen a couple. 100 Thieves was interesting. They're very smart. They know their customer very well, but they also try new things. Like I have a lot of respect for 100 Thieves. They are a very smart organization. I love what they do, and they're very good about how they brand themselves. Yep. And they also seem to be surprisingly very good at making sure their players stay in line. every org has players that, they're very good at games, but they're not very good at
Peopling.
life. Yeah, doing social things. They're very. I don't know how 100 Thieves does it. They must have several managers on site actively just staring at them 24/7. But they're very good at their PR. I think they were testing the market to see. They knew they were going to probably get a negative reaction, but they wanted to see to what level. Right? Every brand tests how far they can reach out beyond their current market. I think with NFTs, and I love ETH. I love Ethereum. I love most of these blockchains, but people listening to this who are ETH maxis probably won't like me saying this. There's two ways that you're going to make this work. Stop calling it NFTs because the name has been butchered in traditional life. And NFTs is not even a word that people should use. NFTs is back-end technology. It should just be called collectibles, or it should be called a token. It shouldn't be called an NFT because that name has been butchered. It's like saying blockchain to people in the 9-to-5 world. They don't like hearing it.
Right.
These are things that are technologies people don't necessarily need to know about. They should, but if someone works 9 to 5 and they've got kids and they're more worried about their mortgage than they are about Web3, which is most of the world, because you and I are the fortunate people in this situation, they shouldn't have to know that it's running on blockchain. That's not their job. Their job is to enjoy the product that they purchased that is somehow making their life easier or more enjoyable. That's all business is. Is this making my life easier or do I enjoy it? That's business. That's as simple as it should be. And so stop saying NFTs, stop saying blockchain, let it all run on the back end, but have these as like membership cards or tokens, and they do have to provide utility. I think most people are not going to have the wealth to spend several $100s on a digital NFT that's just a poster. Now, I think that'll change in 5 years because once AR comes into play, once Apple releases their AR glasses, the AR kit is already out, but once they release the glasses, and like this wall behind me, which is a white wall, you may see it as a white wall, but when my glasses, I see it as like a giant Pikachu statue that's like inside the wall.
That's right.
That's when like you sell things like that, and it makes a lot of sense. But for now, the utility is important. So one thing with 100 Thieves, they sell out in like 10 minutes. So I want a 100 Thieves membership card. Yes, it uses Ethereum or Solana or whatever, but give me a 100 Thieves card. It is a membership card like a Bloomingdale's card. And if I own that card, I'm guaranteed a part of your inventory that I can buy this product and maybe a discount, or maybe I get to see your collection 2 months before it releases and I can go brag to people. Or maybe I'm a reseller, right? Maybe I'm one of those guys who has a PS5 in their home and they're selling it for $2,000. Maybe I want to buy that card and then I can trade it. But there has to be some sort of utility, and I think most esports orgs don't understand that yet. I think 100 Thieves will understand that because they're extremely smart and they will hire the right people. If it's not them, they'll hire the right people. But I think it's all branding and wording. And in the gaming world, the reason why gamers don't like hearing this is because they've already been over monetized. And so you're not the message has been, look at these NFTs you can buy. And like that pisses people off. What you gotta say is we've made NFTs as a new mechanic. Here's a couple for free, or here's some if you're day one in the game, you get something that's worth $1,000, but you get it for free. Try out our trading system. Because if you're building something that's a new monetization structure, that's what they think, that there's just another microtransaction, they're gonna hate it. Just like they hate Weebooks. If you say this is either a new gameplay mechanic or it's a new system that's added to the game to make the game more dynamic, and you're getting some of these for free when you buy the game, that's a different story. I think it's a wording. It's the fact that we can't use Ethereum, or we don't tell people they're using Ethereum because they don't need to know. But I think Ethereum is not being scalable for gaming right now, which is why you see big groups like Forte Labs and Solana Ventures and all these other groups raise hundreds of millions of dollars because every game developer wants this. And I think if you do it right, every gamer will want this in certain contexts. That's a whole other thing. I think there's different contexts for this. But the way it's structured now is not properly branded. I think everything's branding. If you brand it in a different way, and you also education. I think that's like so important. Like you can't be an esports org and release this NFT and like not explain what the hell it is. Like everyone knows what a T-shirt is. Nobody knows. Well, I know, you know, a good amount of people know, but the majority of people don't know what the hell a digital asset is. Like they don't understand that I could take this water bottle, attach a one-of-one code to it, and sell it to someone on an exchange and send it to them and somehow make money. They don't understand what that means. So you have to explain, you have to put it in the educational context of Pokemon cards and like Yu-Gi-Oh! And like CSGO skins, and the esports orgs haven't done that. Quite frankly, because I think most don't actually understand how it works and they just wanted to see if they can make money on it. But that's okay. That's just how it goes.
Right. And no, I like that answer. And you had mentioned Solana because like I'm a huge, of course, Ethereum fan. Like that's where I grew up, and that's where a lot of the high end art is, a lot of the attention is. Now something I chatted with a gentleman named Michael Tant, one of the first people I met in Web3, one of my favorite people, and he is, now of course, I don't, and correct me if I got the title wrong, but like I believe I know he's a co-founder, but he's also a VC in a crypto, he's in a crypto VC firm, like where they invest in different types of DeFi assets, and a lot of Solana assets. And he's actually what I was interested in Solana before I chatted with him, but after chatting with him, I became very interested in Solana because it just was the speed. And also what I had seen is that now we won't see the likes of these games for probably another, probably 2 to 5 years. But the quality of games that are being built on Solana that I've seen right now, that just feels like the play when it comes to gaming. Like I feel like Ethereum goes to fine art, and I feel like Solana goes to gaming. That's just my take on that. I really hope it goes all to Ethereum. I love Ethereum, but I got to recognize the downfalls or the pitfalls of Ethereum versus Solana. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer, and I'm not a maxi of any.
Right.
I think I see this from the market side, and the average person doesn't care to. They only care to play the game. When I see two things happening at the same time. I see these new blockchain networks, the Solanas, Polkadot's another one I like, Ethereum, Polygon, which is layer 2 of Ethereum, and another group I like a lot, Mythical Games, is just going off and doing their own thing using Amazon architecture and a few other things.
Wild, yeah.
I see two things happening. I see publishers realizing they have to adopt this, but they don't necessarily want to be on these networks, or they want to use the networks but build their own off-chain replica of them. So you're going to have the Activisions of the world, most likely, I'm just speculating, building their own walled garden where over time they build out their IP, and when they have like 6 amazing games, they can trade characters among each other. Like that whole vision of transforming your asset.
Yep.
You see that vertical happening, and they already have the funds, right, to do that themselves. They don't need to raise capital. And then you have this other side that's forming, which it will be bigger than them over time, but not for the next like 2 decades, or maybe sooner, depending on how much developers move. Because if developers get paid enough, they'll move. But this other side, which is the blockchain networks raising money, and it's like a renaissance for the indie gaming sector. Like you got publisher and you got the indie games, and I think they're going to fragment over time because, and this is where I see on the venture side where I'm on, is the developers don't have many options to raise capital. They've got a couple. So they've got VC. If you're lucky enough to find a good VC, it's a great group to work with, but they're going to take a lot out of your company. They'll let you use your IP, it's your thing, but they're going to take a lot of your company. You're not going to have a lot of creative freedom to a degree. Again, it's VC basis. There are some very good ones. Then you've got the other side, which is the publisher. The odds are, if you work with a publisher, they'll give you the funds. They have the backing. They have the understanding. They've bought games to gold many times. You're probably going to do very well if you just have a great idea. And you have their backing, but the difference is they're going to probably take your IP because that's how publishers really make money, is owning the IP. That's how they do everything. So even if they don't acquire you as a studio, you still work for them. You don't work for yourself. That's just how that works. So those are the two. And then you have the third, which has been the hardest one, which is using Republic or Fig and raising, crowdfunding for your game. And that has been very bad for the consumer because there's been a lot of bad actors who can't fulfill their promise of making a game, and people who've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so that's been a very good option, but one that won't probably net you a lot of money because your fans have been disgruntled and they've been ripped off. I
Right.
do see the third option getting much better now with NFTs and with the fact that these blockchain networks have the funds to actually help people fulfill the game they were developing. Because I'm not sure a lot of those games on the traditional side were ultimate failures. I think they misunderstood how much money they needed to build the game. And
Yeah.
I think they probably got overexhausted or overheated and ended up folding because they couldn't compete. They couldn't handle the workload with the amount of money that they raised publicly. That's what I think. So there's two sides to this. And then there's really interesting ones in the middle, which is like your Forte Labs of the world, where they are happy to work with both parties and find means to work with them in odd and different ways that we don't really understand yet. But the third way doesn't really exist. It's just been money thrown at
Right.
very smart people for now. We don't know how that works.
Right.
So it is becoming a much more complex world to invest in, but also a much more fruitful world where there's a lot of opportunity. Someone said to me, "Hey, don't you think the market is frothy?" In market terms, that basically means, isn't there way too much money injected into this industry, but not enough value being generated? Isn't it social media popular? That's kind of like what frothy means.
Right. Right.
And I say no. I have a number of reasons why I list no. But the number one is, going back to when we first talked, is games. It's not just playing anymore. It's what we call GameFi. There's DeFi and then GameFi. It's finance using games. There's medical now uses for games. There's shared spaces for games.
Yep.
So it's not that the market is frothy. It's that the market has expanded. The market is no longer selling on PlayStation or Xbox or PC or mobile. The market is, oh my God, there are so many unbanked who also like to game. There are so many who have ADHD issues, and now there's a prescription medication to take it. Oh my God. We now found a new revenue stream through NFTs because you can add in what's called royalties. And so every time it's traded on the secondary, the company's making money, even if it's on a lower end of the price or a higher end of the price, they're always making money as long as they're delivering good product. And it's different than going public and releasing shares. So it's a complex world. It's a wild world.
And it's not only is it complex, but it's a paradigm shift. I mean, now we're seeing, like these things, a lot of these things are being built from the bottom up. And even though they may receive funding, the doors of Web3 have opened up to the community of them being a major contributor to what's being built. And it turns out, even the Web2 companies that are doing really well, the ones that do the best, and I'll even toot my own horn to the company I'm working at now. It's a legal tech company, and we actually have the ability to, whether people have good experiences or bad experiences, we actually are enabled to invite a product team onto the call and give product feedback sessions, and we can introduce them to newer parts of the product that haven't been fully released. And that is like a game changer when it comes to people feeling like they have a stake in the company, except that's the best version of Web 2 we can get, except now you add that plus monetization, and so you're actually incentivized to build your community, whether that's a game, whether that's a PFP project, whether it's whatever the idea behind whatever the idea is, you are literally incentivized to want to do the right thing. And to your point, it doesn't mean that there's not bad actors and like you're going to find that everywhere. And it's no surprise that you're going to see it in the blockchain with all the rug pulls and all. But and I want to start wrapping it up here, but there's a point that I want to hit on, is that the narrative that I see, even with the example of like Nate front running, like, OpenSea, it's not, it was the fact that he did the debate was on insider trading, but instead the conversation should have been, the public actually has information to all of the data. And as you mentioned, data doesn't lie, to see exactly what Nate was doing. It wasn't all behind closed doors. It wasn't, like we had to rely on a statement from OpenSea, although they made one and they had to. But the community had the data. Like it was all public, and we could actually see the actions that were being made.
So it is, but this is where I think there's going to be so many great businesses doing this. I think There's so much data that when you have so much data, it's actually harder to understand what's happening. And so I really think there's going to be some great blockchain auditing firms that are going to pop up here. Like if someone's if someone's listening to this and you're getting your CPA or you're going to be a forensic accountant, if you start a blockchain audit firm right now, you will probably become a very wealthy person because they barely exist. The big four don't really have them. Big four accounting firms. And I guarantee if you're that good at, I call them blockchain runners, people who just kind of run through the blockchain and find where the missing links are and find what's really happening. If you do that really well and you bring people under you and they start doing that well, you have a massive firm on your hands. I think blockchain forensics and audit is going to be a really big deal because most people, even like me, I don't have time to find out what native OpenSea is doing. I don't get paid to do that. For me, if I'm OpenSea, I would have hired a blockchain auditing firm where every day they are running audit and making sure that I'm compliant in some way. Now, granted, what is compliance when you're in the Wild West? There is no compliance. So they can't go to jail. I know in another world, in another industry, he would have gotten serious criminal repercussions for doing this.
Right.
But he'll get away with this because there are no rules. Right. He won't get away with this socially, but I mean, like, he's not going to serve time or pay a fine of any insane amount. But honestly, I thought when I found out about that, I thought that was really messed up. And what I don't like is a lot of people in crypto, like the people inside the space, in the circle, were kind of defending him and saying he was such a big help. I think that's true. There's always the duality of man, kind of. There's always good and bad people and bad and good people. Right. But there's also a thing called law and order. And I don't think we throw that out the window when we have crypto. And when someone's doing that kind of thing, there should be repercussions. And he can be the best person to his wife or his dog or to his kids. But,
I mean, even to the people, because even the dialogue, we follow a lot of the same people, but the what I've seen is like, this would have, like when OpenSea makes some bonehead decision now, or they've done something where they haven't like gotten to a support request long enough, or they don't engage with their community. Like, man, like Nate did all this. Like, we kind of miss Nate, and so
because he was very good at what he did. But
right, exactly. But
here's the other thing, OpenSea is making a lot of money. I'm sure he was getting paid good money. But at some point, it's just being greedy.
100%.
I learned a saying from my father. It's one of my favorite sayings, and I don't know where he got it. I'm sure it's from somewhere. He's an older guy. He'll watch this and probably be offended I said that. But it's pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. He's a hog.
Yeah.
So this is part of the experience of like growing pains. There are going to be other Nates. We will find other people doing things that are not ethically correct, even though there's no rules. There will be rules eventually. To think that rules won't exist here is kind of like an immature idea. It will happen.
It's bullshit. Yeah.
When it happens, I don't know. Who does it? I don't know. But it will happen. But one Nate does not tarnish all the good that's being done in this space. There's so many amazing things happening. And, of course, the traditional media of the world won't talk about how people started NFT projects that gave pizza to communities, or another NFT project that's helping charities and helping refugees, or another group that's like trying to create a foundation that gives artists money to continue to. These are amazing altruistic deeds that people should be rewarded and spotlighted. But that doesn't get clicks on CNBC. What does get clicks is insider trading in an NFT company.
Right.
But but for every one bad Nate, there are 5 other amazing Kyles. So I hope the CNNs and the Foxes of the world really take some time to actually learn this space, because I think 2 things here. One, it's not fair to the people who've done some really amazing work here to only share the bad. But I also think it's in their best interest that if the main blue chip Fortune 500 companies of the world don't start jumping on now, the companies that are starting here from day one will end up taking their position. A lot of them will anyway, because of I love the book 0 to 1.
I haven't read that one.
You should. It's a fantastic book. I believe, but I don't want to get the name wrong. just because I'll sound like a fool in front of thousands of people. And I'm forgetting the name because it's later at night.
They're the one. I see it
How
here.
did I forget his name? Peter Thiel wrote that book.
Yeah.
And he's a very successful VC.
Yeah.
Amazing book. We're experiencing that now, that companies are very large and slow, and they're inhibited by the traditional world, and there are DAOs that are very nimble now that will be replacing them. Right. Yeah, I have to say, I haven't watched all of your podcasts, but I may be one of the ones that rambles onto 1,000 different territories, which I could do hours of this. Is there anything that I can share here that might be valuable to your audience that is around what you wanted to talk about today, or how do you want to go about this? Because I am not the best podcast guest.
Yeah. No. So really what, like, cause I know you can go for hours, cause I've seen you go for hours in Clubhouse rooms. So, I've seen that. No, I actually, unfortunately for this episode, I do actually have to, end it right here. I have a prior commitment that I typically go to, but we're really, like, what I want to do is do a lot of, like, I think this is a great introduction to who you are. And I think we can go down a lot of different rabbit holes in future episodes. And, maybe maybe share some alpha, but, like, I know Michael Tant wanted to, like, come back on and do co-host, for an episode. And I think that, to tell you the truth, that would be a badass, like three-way podcast, to be honest. Do you know him?
Personally, no. I know of him.
Gotcha.
I can say that I'm definitely a fan of being on your show again. I think you're a great host, and I think I said, when I met you on Clubhouse, I thought you were a really good person. I really appreciate people that have good hearts, people who have good intentions, and I can just tell you good intentions. So I would love to be back on. I would love to be on with any guest you recommend. I trust you. I have faith in you, and I like what you're doing, and I'm entertained by your content. So I'm happy to be back on.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And I guess, to wrap things up, man, like, if you were to put on your, like, game fund hat here, if you were to speak to someone who's whether they're a game developer, I guess pick your, because it's all going to be a different answer. I just thought about that. So if choose one, a game developer or a content creator that's just learning about Web3, pick one. What would be your first piece of advice? They're curious. They're not bearish, but they're curious. What would be your first thing of advice to give them?
So for a game developer, and I don't think I need to tell them because that's why they became game developers, do not sacrifice gameplay for better economics. A lot of games out today, there are very good ones, but most of them out today remind me of, do you remember in middle school or high school playing, like, on the Battleground site, and there were, like, these little web games, and they were, like, quick games you played in the library? Yeah. So a lot of them are like that, and most of them don't have replayability as a function. I think, and what happens with those games, just to summarize, is play to earn has to be fun for it to be a real game. A lot of play to earns now are minimum wage jobs where they're fun for a few days, and then you realize, oh crap, I spent so much time on this that I'm not doing my real job, and I'm making more on this than my real job if I'm in minimum wage or close to it. Now it's a job, and when it becomes a job, it's not fun. It's work and finance. So don't sacrifice fun. It doesn't matter if you build the greatest economy in the world. If the game's not fun, nobody wants to play it. Fun, by the way, doesn't mean like it has to be happy and jumpy. I mean, like, if you're going to build Uncharted, build Uncharted. If you're going to build a horror game that scares the crap out of people, build that. If you're going to build a game that makes people cry, build that. And think about economics second. If you don't, you're not going to make it. As they say, NGMI. For the creator side, you really have to focus on not only education of your audience, but education of yourself. And just like these esports orgs, figure out how you brand it in a way that is honest to your culture. Meaning, like, most of your audience doesn't care about a CryptoPunk or a Bored Ape. It doesn't, or like how to trade them and make money. It's like what can you provide as entertaining or informative value? Because a creator does one of two things: they either entertain or they inform. One of those two things. How does the world that we live in now apply to what you already do? And really think about that critically before you start sharing that content, because you can do 1,000 good things and do one bad thing, and everyone remembers that bad thing.
Yep.
And so it's very difficult to get that audience back. So really think critically about how you're branding not only yourself, but branding yourself in this context of Web3.
I love that, man. No, I think that's a perfect note to end it on. Jonah, thank you so much again for coming on. I know we're going to do another one of these, and I'm sure I'll see you in more, well, probably not Clubhouse, maybe a little Clubhouse, but mostly Twitter Spaces and on.
I will say I want you to carry me to Diamond, so we can be chatting.
Dude, yes, let's do that. Let's do that, man. I love it.
Thank you so much for your time and hearing all of my gibberish. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Hey, have a good one, my friend.
You too.